Well, some people don't like mutual funds. There's a lot of restrictions, they can be really complicated, and let's not forget the high fees. Well, this leads people to check out exchange-traded funds, or ETFs. The problem there is they're almost as complicated, and there's like 1,200 of them, so how do you know where to start? Well, lucky for you, I'm a bit of an ETF nerd. Not so much a nerd, I just like studying it. Well, all right, I'm a nerd. The point is, I'm not smart enough to use big words, so today I'm going to talk about the differences between market ETFs and sector ETFs in layman's terms. All right, let's start with market ETFs, or maybe you've heard of them as index ETFs. Same thing. These will try to replicate an index of the market. You know when you hear on the news that the Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 80 points today? That's an index. The S&P 500 is also another one that you may hear of, along with the NASDAQ 100 and maybe even the Russell 2000. That's probably the fourth place one that gets talked about the least often. Those are all indexes. Basically, these are just a summary of a bunch of stocks. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is usually just a combination of 30 stocks. The S&P 500, 500 stocks. The Russell 2000, 2,000 stocks. Now the problem is you can't actually invest in the Dow Jones or in the S&P 500. They're just a measurement, if you will. So if you wanted to invest in the S&P 500, you would have to go buy all 500 stocks, and who has the money to do that? Well, there's a bunch of ETFs that let you participate in the index without actually having to go buy all those stocks. For example, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, made up of 30 stocks, rather than buying 30 different stocks, you could just buy the ETF with the symbol DIA, and that'll let you participate in that same average at a fraction of the cost. For the S&P 500, by far the most popular and original ETF is the SPY. If you're looking at the NASDAQ 100, the most popular ETF for that one, for some reason, the symbol is QQQ. And if you like the Russell 2000, then the most popular ETF to participate in 2,000 stocks is IWM. Why these ETFs? Well, to make it quite simple, liquidity, right? If you're managing your own IRA or you got a guy doing it for you, liquidity is the most important thing by far. I mean, you have to know that you can get in and out when you want. You don't want to have to wait for someone to come along and buy the shares from you. If you want out, you want to get out just like that. These four market ETFs literally have tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of shares that trade each day, making them the most liquid market ETFs that you can trade. Okay, so those are the market or index ETFs, and now you have a few that you can look at. Next, we have the sector ETFs. This is really simple, but for some reason my industry makes this really complicated, so let's dive in. Sector ETFs allow you to focus on one sector of the market. So for instance, if you were interested in only healthcare stocks, well, rather than go look up a bunch of healthcare stocks, you could say, let me just invest in the sector as a whole. If you wanted to invest in tech stocks or banking stocks, you can zoom in to those individual sectors rather than the whole market. So why would you want to invest in a particular sector? Well, diversification, right? It's that big boring word that financial advisors like to use, but these sector ETFs allow you to diversify so that you're not all invested in one thing. See, if you bought the S&P 500 or you use the SPY to do that, yes, you would have a market ETF and technically you should be diversified. However, the S&P 500 is made up of 33% financial stocks. That's kind of a big chunk, and you may not want that. You may want a different sector to help kind of offset any potential risk in the financial sector. So if you wanted to look at, say, healthcare, then one of the popular ETFs for the healthcare sector is the XLV. I don't know how they come up with these names, but XLV is a healthcare sector ETF. Maybe you've looked at the sector ETFs and you said, hey, I want to have more financial stocks in my portfolio. Well, if that's the case, then the most popular ETF for financial stocks is the XLF. That's the symbol. XLF. That will only focus on the financial stocks. You can literally go to any sector that you want. Home builders. Let's say you wanted to invest in only home building stocks. Well, the symbol for that is XHB, and you could participate in just that. I'm not saying it's an actual investment you want to consider. I don't know. I'm just saying that you could zoom into that sector and only have home building stocks if that's what you wanted. Now, there's one drawback to the sector ETFs. they tend to be just a little bit more expensive. You see, ETFs charge what's called an expense ratio. And the market ETFs, they're not usually very high. Like the SPY charges 0.11%. No big deal. Now the sector ETFs are doing a little bit more of the heavy lifting, focusing in, and they realize that they're kind of zooming into a sector and really not broadening their horizons, let's say it that way. So because of that, and because they're doing the work for you, they tend to charge a little bit more. Now the fees are usually very small anyways and are nothing compared to some of the mutual funds that are out there. They also don't actually charge you individually. See, if ETFs have an expense ratio, they just adjust the share price to reflect that. So you never actually have to physically pay anybody, or you never see money come out of your account and payable to an ETF. They just adjust the share price along the way. Okay, so that's a quick look at market ETFs and sector ETFs. I hope you're still awake. I know it's not exciting, but there are actually quite a few more. There's so many more sectors that you can look at and plenty of great ETFs for them. Now, not all of our videos are this boring. We focus on all kinds of different topics. So head over to our YouTube channel or go to jazzwealth.com and click on the helpful videos section up at the top. If you'd like help managing your IRA or Roth IRA and you're looking for somebody to do that for you, I'm your guy. Just go to jazzwealth.com, click on Invest Now, and I will personally follow up with you to make sure that we get your account open or transferred. If I can be of any other assistance to you, feel free to leave a comment, send me an email, or as always, you can contact me directly at